President Ahmed Bola Tinubu's recent marching order to the military against the agitators or those calling for self-determination could be considered in clear terms as a threat to democracy. Because in a democratic setting, Nigeria believes to have been practicing a people's right to expression, right to liberty, right to political and religious opinions. Expressions is being captured or protected by the instrument of the law, which is the Constitution. The Constitution guarantees the protection of the right to self determination, the self actualization, self preservation, and self identity of any individual or group of people who, of course, felt threatened within a society uh, based on the United Nations Charter on people's rights and fundamental right to self-determination. Now, I'm Bola Tinubu giving an injunction, a military injunction to the military to declare war against those who uh, have different political opinion about the continued existence of Nigeria, who be considered a very unfortunate and mischievous in the sense that this is a man who believes he was being controlled or guided by the principles of democracy when the military junta of the military regime of Abacha was invoked. He was canvassing that democratic rules and the fundamental right of the people should be protected, and not knowing that the same person will be the prophecy of what he once professed. That is the position of the law. So that implies that President Ahmed Bola Tinubu dispensation, or what I may call a regime in quote, because it is dictatorial tendencies. It does not give room for people's expression or opinion, or people give room to criticism. No government survives outside criticism. In fact, criticism is one of the tools any government uses to sit up and know exactly the impact of such government to the people, how the policy and the government impulse is being felt within the community. Aside that, the political opponents might use that, deploy that as a means of checkmating the excesses of the opponent or the incumbent uh, government. But then it serves as a very vital tool in enhancing uh, the economic, social, and political sphere within a society. That being said, let's come back to the position of the United Nations Charter on the fundamental right of the people. You get to understand that, of course, it's not a surprise. Nigeria is a signatory to the United Nations Charter on the right to self-determination, the right to people's fundamental right to self-determination. This is what the United Nations Charter's Article 1, subsection 2 says: establishes the right to self-determination as a fundamental principle of international law and a central purpose of the UN. What does this imply? That the primary essence or responsibility of the United Nations, or the reason why United Nations was established in the first place, is to protect this right to self-determination, the right to liberty, the right to expression of people or nations who believe that they deserve such right, or want to express such right, want to live out such right, guided or protected under the law. It is a fundamental principle of international law and a central purpose of the UN. you can understand the arguments. It is very logical and rational. So a layman will understand it based on his perspective. But based on legal perspective, I'm not a legal practitioner, but it is an open argument as the Constitution is well spread out and has no any ambiguity or difficulty in understanding the clear position of the United Nations. Let me go on with these provisions. According to the United Nations Charter, Article 1, subsection 2, which recognizes and emboldens the people who are seeking for self-preservation, self-determination, as the case is, citing the purpose for such. Now, the UN's main purpose is to develop friendly relations between nations based on respect for the right to self-determination. Do you get this? Very clear. Based on the right to self-determination, that implies that no nation under the UN or being a signatory to the United Nations Charter on self-determination of the rights to people to self-determination will in any way act in contradiction to the provisions of the law of the United Nations. It's an international law. It has this very fundamental principle that every member state must respect, abide, and uphold the tenets of these principles. Now, Tinubu has done out of the provisions of the United Nations or international law by giving a marching order that the agitators should be crushed. So Tinubu has repped not just the Nigerian constitution, but the entire principle or fundamental principle of the United Nations Charter or law on international laws or relations. Now, again, binding, the right to self-determination is binding on all United Nations member. The right to self-determination is binding, which means the government of Nigeria, under the watch of Ahmed Bola Tinubu, have broken the law, has broken the hedge, and the serpent has to bite. So it behoves on the United Nations now to examine the excesses or the position of Ahmed Bola Tinubu regarding this right, which is binding on the member states. So Nigeria should not be considered an isolation to these principles. So if there is a clear deviation, if there is a clear abuse of these laws, so the United Nations has the right, the sovereign right, to call the Nigerian government or Ahmed Bola Tinubu to question why should you, as a member state, violate this principle, which is binding as a member of the United Nations. You are a signatory to this charter, to this international law, and you have no right under any disguise, under any uh, interest to go in contrary to the provisions of the law. Now, where does the UN come in? After seeing this gross abuse of power, abuse of the principle, fundamental principle of the United Nations, and non-compliance to this is quite unfortunate and should be considered as a threat to not just democracy, to the entire human race. Now let's go on. Content, uh, based on the context of this discussion, the right to self-determination includes the right to freely determine political status and pursue economic, social, and cultural development. Do you understand that? The United Nations made it very clear, and that is quite interesting. We've got to dig more into it. You can see you have to come with an open mind to discuss this. It is not biased. It is very open and very plain. I'm reading an extract from the United Nations Charter on Article 1, subsection of the self-determination right to the people. So you can see very clearly that what Nigerian government or Ahmed Bola Tinubu is going contrary to the provisions of the international laws, which he or she is a member of such a charter, a signatory to such charter. Now, he said that the right to self-determination includes the right to freely determine political status and pursue economic, social, and cultural development. This is the position of the United Nations. Now, in the light of these realities and what is playing out currently within the Nigerian state, you can see that already Nigeria government, under the watch of the successive government, Buhari, Tinubu, doing the same part of error, the same part of abuse, in contradiction to the provisions of the United Nations Charter, could be considered as a coup against the democratic process, a coup against humanity. And such should be vehemently resisted by any responsible personality or nations, just as the United Nations. Unfortunately, there seems to be a weak United Nations, and the law enforcement arm of the United Nations seems not to be in existence, because after the gross violation of this by the member state, they should have summoned the member state and possibly sanctioned them or withdraw them momentarily from the membership of this treaty for violating this the right to people's expression to self-determination. One, he said that this self-determination is binding on all UN members, which Nigeria is a signatory. Now, if it is so, that implies that the Nigerian government being, the Nigerian state being a signatory to the United Nations or a member to the United Nations must abide by the rules or the laws that defines the United Nations, which one of them is the right to self-determination. No member state should go contrary to that law. It is sacrosanct and very clear that anyone who go in contradiction to that has violated the United Nations principles, fundamental principles in that regard, and should be called to question and why, or should be held responsible for whatever action. But unfortunately, of most recent United Nations arm in charge of these violations or to the rights of the people have written to the Nigerian government regarding Mazi Nnamdi Kanu's extraordinary rendition. After the expiration of 6 months, which was given, they have never done anything apart from remaining silent, and the continued incarceration of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu has become something that is so worrisome and that questions the democratic process, the right uh, to the rule of law being respected within the Nigerian political sphere. It's quite unfortunate. He said the right to self-determination includes the right to freely determine political status and pursue economic, social, and cultural development, which means every ethnic nationality or nation within a defined enclave has the right to pursue their, their inalienable right to self-preservation, thereby enhancing their opportunities to freely determine political status and pursue economic, social, and cultural development. Just as Nigerians today are being stuck in the wheel of motionless and despair, economic dilemma, insecurity rocking the entire country, a set of people just like the Biafrans have taken their stance. The Oduduwas perhaps might be dragging their feet, and as well the Arewas who perhaps are indifferent about their positions or indecisive regarding what is going on, except for now, is some persons are saying that if the Nubos must return back to power, there is possibility of Nigeria or the Northerners pulling away from Nigeria, which is self-motivated. Is selfishness. It does not define the true, of course, position of any liberal mind. So it's only when things does not favor you, you now canvass or push for alternative. But when you think you have undue advantage against others, you will get a sense of just as Ahmed Bola Tinubu is doing today. These are people who once said that they never believed in the unity of Nigeria 30 years ago. They have not come out to tell us that they have changed their positions either. But occupying the seat of power today, you can see how he's throwing his weight against what he should protect. Well, unfortunately, as I rightly said, the UN is just a toothless bulldog. They have not done anything to serve as a deterrent to others who might want to abuse such rights or go contrary to the position as well spread out in United Nations Charter on self-determination and the rights of people to their cultural, social, economic identity of preservation. Let's get to know what is your take regarding this because it's an important subject we must continue to discuss and elaborate so that we can get a clear definition of what is playing out today and the position of the law. It is not just a whipping of sentiments. We are citing the provisions of the law, which Nigeria cannot deny, or the government of the day cannot deny of its existence. They are signatory to that, and of course, have the statutory obligation to comply, adhere to these principles. Well, let's get to know what is your own take regarding this. As I remain Chigozendi Bode, host anchor and analyst, giving my own perspective regarding this development, that it is nothing short of rape of democracy. And of course, interhuman's existence and liberty, just as in recent past, the Vice President to Ahmed Bola Tinubu said very clearly in the last General United Nations General Assembly that he re-emphasized that, though he never believed in what the submissions he made, that the right to self-determination is an inalienable right given to God, to men, and cannot be usurped by any government, any nation, any interest, any person under any disguise has been enshrined in the United Nations law or charter to fundamental rights of the people. Thank you for watching again. See you next time. Don't forget to hit the like buttons and turn on the notification buttons. Follow us for more political discourse and more exciting moments here with Chigos and Debo as we continue to bring your way very interesting and exciting interactions with open-mindedness. Bye until I see you